So, as said, I have never met you, but I was just reading from your bio that you are their sophist since 1975, and you were studying with Sri Raghavan and until his passing 1995, so 20 years. You have been associated of the United Lords of their Sophists in Santa Barbara. You are co-founder of a studio work of the Krupta Vidya Circle. Sorry, my pronunciations.
Quite all right.
And you are board member of International Theosophy conferences. You are a frequent presenter of theosophical themes. By the way, people, I was finding some of your videos in YouTube, and they are really worth of studying and looking. So I recommend everybody to find Kirk's videos. And then you are also architect, beautiful
Correct. Yes.
illustrator and graphic designer, but the
Mhm.
author and certainly beautiful presenter. Your articles are in journal Vidya. By the way, is Vidya very old?
Well, it's kind of a continuation of a tradition that was started in 1975.
Right.
It was
Yeah.
originally Hermes magazine, which came out of Santa Barbara monthly journal, and
Hmm.
then it turned into Vidya after Raghavan passed away. Um, and so yeah, so as a continuation, that was in 1996 or so that it started up again as Vidya instead of Hermes. So yeah, some
Right.
time, 30
Very
years.
nice. Yeah.
Yeah,
Then you have written in the Theosophist, a
yeah.
magazine based in Adyar, and then Theosophical Journal of Australia. So, do you have background with Australia?
Well, I was invited to speak there last year. They
Ah,
initially it was going to be just one talk in Brisbane and then a 4-day retreat, but I ended up doing a tour of most of the continent to various lodges and met many wonderful folks, theosophists, students of theosophy that became friends. And
beautiful.
one of them is the editor of their national journal there. So yes, I've been sharing
Uh-huh.
some articles with him. And there's one in their current journal and one coming up in the next one as well. So yeah.
Beautiful. So I really hope that you become our friends too. So
Likewise.
warmly welcome. And you are going to talk about the mystery of Buddha, which is wonderful. We have the Vesak is coming in 1 week. So no, when it is, yeah, very soon.
May
A little bit
1st.
more than, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, Kirk, the stage is yours and we welcome you.
All right. Thank you so much, Tuiha. And is that how you pronounce your first name? Tuiha?
We say in Finnish Tuija.
Tuija.
Tuija, right.
Very nice. Thank you. Beautiful
By the
name.
way, it means tree of life.
Ah, wonderful.
You know,
Lovely.
when I was small, I didn't like my name because there were many Tuijas in Finland that time. But then when I learned to know what it means, I really am happy about my father because my father wanted to give me that name. So I'm very happy.
Very nice. And
Welcome.
likewise, very nice to meet you as well. So I
Yes,
have
very.
a PowerPoint to share with the talk, which I'm doing now. And this topic is very dear to my heart, which hopefully that will come through as we proceed. And in the tradition that I come from at the United Lodge of Theosophists in Santa Barbara, we always begin a sacred presentation like this with a reading from a devotional text. So I've chosen a relatively short reading from the third fragment of the Voice of the Silence. Know, conqueror of sins, once that a Soani hath crossed the seventh path. All nature thrills with joyous awe and feels subdued. The silver star now twinkles out the news to the night blossoms. The streamlet to the pebbles ripples out the tale. Dark ocean waves will roar it to the rocks, surf bound. Scent-laden breezes sing it to the vales, and stately pines mysteriously whisper, a master has arisen, a master of the day. He standeth now like a white pillar to the west, upon whose face the rising sun of thought eternal poureth forth its first most glorious waves. His mind, like a becalmed and boundless ocean, spreadeth out in shoreless space. He holdeth life and death in his strong hand. Yea, he is mighty, the living power made free in him, that power which is himself, can raise the tabernacle of illusion high above the gods, above great Brahm and Indra. Now he shall surely reach his great reward. Shall he not use the gifts which it confers for his own rest, his own weal and glory, he, the subduer of the great delusion? Nay, O thou candidate for nature's hidden lore, if one would follow in the steps of holy Tathagata, those gifts and powers are not for self. If thou wouldst have that stream of hard-earned knowledge, of wisdom heaven-born, remain sweet running waters, thou shouldst not leave it to become a stagnant pond. Know if of Amitabha, the boundless age, thou wouldst become co-worker, then must thou shed the light acquired, like to the bodhisattvas twain upon the span of all three worlds. Know that the stream of superhuman knowledge and the Deva wisdom thou hast won must from thyself, the channel of Alaya, be poured forth into another bed. Know, O Narjal, thou of the secret path, its pure fresh waters must be used to sweeter make the ocean's bitter waves, that mighty sea of sorrow formed of the tears of men. So, as you will see, I selected this reading for many reasons. First of all, it is a brief but remarkable and challenging portrait, which resonates deeply in the human heart. A sublime description of that which cannot be described, the incarnated Bodhisattva. And as I'm sure many of you know, in the Theravada traditions of Buddhism, 550 lives as a Bodhisattva led to the culminating incarnation we know of as Gautama Buddha. But in the Mahayana and Vajrayana traditions, as in the Theosophical, the historic Buddha was enlightened in a previous evolutionary period and only appeared in the 5th century as one of many bodhisattvic incarnations to reenact the path, to show others the way. And this, in our minds, does not undermine, but magnifies the importance of May 1st, 2026, when nearly 500 million people, 1/9 of the world's population around the world, will celebrate Vesak. Vesak, as again, I'm sure you know, is an ancient Sanskrit term for the lunar month, corresponding to April, May, and is also one of the names given to the holiest day of the year for Buddhists, also called the Buddha Purnima, meaning full moon day, or Buddha Jayanti, meaning victorious. It is a triune celebration, the birthday, the day of enlightenment, and the parinirvana, or the death day of the historical Buddha, all believed to have occurred on the same full moon cycle of the lunar calendar. And while 130 years ago, few people in the West knew much about Buddhism, today there is a plethora of literature and teaching available to us, with new translations of ancient texts emerging every year. those who may be looking for a brief but consummate outline of the life of the Buddha, his early days and renunciation, his 6-year spiritual quest, the ineffable night of enlightenment, and the profound relevance of his teaching to humanity today, could do no better, in our view, than to download a series of 5 brilliant articles by Sri Raghavan Iyer, all freely offered online at theosophytrust.org. These were originally published in 1986 as the introduction to a deeply moving rendition of the Dhammapada and the Tibetan Udana, which is still available through Concord Grove Press, which, if you Google that online, you'll find their selections there. The Dhammapada is revered as the laser-like quintessence of the Buddha's luminous message, as recorded by his direct disciples in simple language and metaphor. So it's very accessible. And we just like to read from the opening chapter called The Twin Verses. The mind is the precursor of all propensities. The mind is foremost. They are all mind-made. If with an impure mind a person speaks or acts, suffering pursues him, even as the wheel follows the hoof of the ox. If with a pure mind a person speaks or acts, happiness follows him, even as his never departing shadow. He abused me. He struck me. He robbed me. Those who do not harbor such thoughts, hatred is stilled. Hatred is never stilled through hatred in this world. By non-hatred alone is hatred stilled. This is the eternal law, Sanatana Dharma. Although the Pali, Chinese, and Tibetan canons contain thousands of treatises, the Dhammapada is venerated as a preamble to all of them, a succinct expression of the ethical principles of wise practice and therapeutic compassion. And this 530-page volume, which is really a lifetime of study and reference, it's got so much material in it, including excerpts from the main discourses of the Buddha, as recorded in the Pali Canon, in which he first presented the Four Noble Truths, the Noble Eightfold Path, the fire sermon. Oh my gosh, so stirring. The anatta, or the no self doctrine, and other core features of Buddhist philosophy. And all of this is but a fraction now, we know, of the 40 or so volumes of the Pali Canon, which is treasured as the basis of what is called Southern or Theravada Buddhism. And it is called Southern because it spread geographically, mostly south and east, from the Indo-Gangetic Plain to Sri Lanka and parts of Southeast Asia. And probably all of you know that H.P. Blavatsky and Colonel Henry Steele Olcott were the first known Westerners to formally take Buddhist vows in Sri Lanka. They were just the 5 beginning precepts, but this was a turning point in history, really, in 1880. While we're not sure how easily you all can see this, but this is an illustration of how Mahayana, or Northern Buddhism, while also traveling south and east, predominantly went north from India through the Silk Road into Central Asia and further into China, Tibet, Korea, Mongolia, and Japan. And it holds that the Buddha taught by multiple means and in differing doctrines appropriate to listeners, in some cases planting Dharma in the mind stream of disciples, designed to manifest only when humanity was ready. And this is why we find the Chinese and Tibetan canons consisting of over 100 volumes, including the terse Diamond Sutra, the Vajra Chedika, the Diamond Cutter is also how it's translated, which was the first printed book in 1868, the Common Era. And it's now widely recognized as a root Mahayana teaching. A fresh English rendition of the Diamond Sutra was edited by Sri Raghavan in 1984, along with the Heart Sutra and other core excerpts. And these, I think, are also still available at Concord Grove Press. But these selections that were chosen and included as part of this volume from the Mahaprajnaparamita literature, that is the perfection of wisdom literature, are central to the message of what is called the second turning of the wheel. And this is where we encounter the pictorial of the exalted bodhisattva, the ineffable and sublime fusion, culminating knowledge or awakening to reality itself, combined with sacrificial love and service of the most exalted kind, which is central to Mahayana teaching. Through the path of the 10 paramitas, the cultivation of the 3 kayas, the perfected bodhisattva conquers all afflictive mental states, literally breaking this causal chain, the chain of the nidanas, which is a whole teaching in and of itself, breaking that chain and thereby terminating unconscious rebirth. But more than that, these heroic conquerors, as they're called, also consciously adopt an interminable series of wise and harmonically emanated reincarnations in order to assist all beings trapped or lost in the 6 shadowy realms of samsaric existence. And all of this is illustrated in what is this panka, which you find on the exterior walls of many, if not all, Tibetan temples. And by continue to participate in this cyclic realm, they become known as chakravartins, that is, wheel turners, converting the bhava chakra, the poisonous wheel of becoming and suffering, into dharma chakra, the wheel of teaching and sacrificial service, leading towards the summits of universal enlightenment for all beings. In the Vajracharika, the state of such a being is described as no state, as having no phenomenal attributes. Their nature cannot be properly set forth in words because the omnipresent, omnidirectional diamond heart is said to contain all dharmas, serving all sentient beings, past, present, and future. He or she or it cannot be limited to any particular incarnation, personality, name or form, expression or external robes, signs or marks. Instead, it is the attributeless absolute, both void and plenum, which is the first fundamental principle of esoteric philosophy as given by HPB in The Secret Doctrine, which, quote unquote, exalts the holy ones. And because this principle is unconditioned and utterly transcendent, while also universally immanent, both the void of abstract space and a boundless plenum of pure potentiality pervading every point of cosmic life, we are therefore not drawn to succumb to the error of seeing the vestures of a bodhisattva as a form of escapism or extinction. The Buddha, as we're told in the voice, teaches in all worlds. The Sambhogakaya vesture is that which allows the bodhisattva to retain this great and complete knowledge of every plane of manifested experience needed to serve sentient beings. And this is a quote from the Mahaprajnaparamita, chapter 14. The omniscient one exists Why? Because he has attained the 10 powers of a bodhisattva. He knows what is possible and what is impossible. He knows the causes and the conditions and the karmic retribution of actions. He knows the samadhis and the deliverances. He knows the good or bad faculties of beings. He knows the various kinds of deliverances from desire. He knows the innumerable lineages of all types of universes. He knows all the abodes and their paths. He knows the conduct and the thoughts of beings in their previous existences. He has acquired the discrimination of the divine I. He knows the cessation of all the impurities. He distinguishes clearly between good and bad. He preaches a supreme doctrine in all the universes. He has acquired the taste of ambrosia. He has found the middle way. He knows the true nature of all conditioned or unconditioned dharmas. He has rejected forever all desire of the three realms. It is for these reasons that the Buddha is omniscient. The third turning of the wheel is said to have been given through the great Yogacarya school founded by Asanga and his brother Vasubandhu in the 5th century of the Common Era, also sometimes called Chittamatra or mind only. It holds that consciousness is the key to understanding reality, and so quintessentially is reality. And this standpoint is represented in a magnificent way in the Lankavatara Sutra, wherein the Buddha, abiding in a realm that is accessible only through the exercise of high spiritual capacities, discourses with Mahamati, the chief of the Bodhisattvas. And here, the dual nature of manas, which in the Buddhist conception embraces both mind and heart, both thought and will, is both within time and utterly beyond it. Spiritual awakening is described as a process of attuning manas to alaya vijnana, the universal storehouse of consciousness in exalted states of meditation. And in the culminating stages, the 5 poisons or kleshas are entirely transmuted into the 5 aspects of non-dual wisdom, where the Shrotapati, the aspirant or the listener, joins the Buddha family in alignment with the logoic Dhyani Buddha, of which Manas is a ray. And this is also described as the fusion of individuality with universality. And in the Lankavatara, the highest nirvanic consciousness is no isolated bliss, in fact, but equated with Maha Karuna, that is pure love or absolute compassion, bridging the one and the many, perfect, timeless peace and patience with wise, benevolent action, assisting all in the realms of time of ceaseless change. And it's so beautiful because it describes the manvantaric labor, that is, this ceaseless reincarnations of such a being, as being in fact no labor, for there's no more self and other. And if a bodhisattva were to even have the idea of self and other, they would not be a bodhisattva, according to the sutra. And all of these themes can, of course, be found poetically suggested in The Voice of the Silence, revealing partial aspects of what we would call the 4th turning of the wheel, embracing while also transcending the exoteric traditions of Buddhism. And prior to the translation of the voice in 1889, the Bodhisattva ideal and the Paramita path were virtually unknown in the West, despite the barbarous and cruel hand of so-called civilization that was clearly emerging. HPB and the masters who stood behind her understood humanity's need for the return of long-forgotten mysteries to be placed before the eye of the soul as the basis of worldwide spiritual regeneration and future civilizations. And in her preface to the Voice and in the introduction to the SD, both, HPB affirms that both texts were derived from the same series, originally taken down in Senzar, she says, over 1 million years ago, from the words of divinely illuminated beings who dictated it to the sons of light in Central Asia at the very beginning of the fifth root race. After numerous unrevealed trials and under the strict orders and guidance of the masters, and after crisscrossing the globe several times in devotion to esoteric study, HPB gained access to these otherwise secret teachings, still preserved in the hidden libraries and through the verbal instruction of the fraternity of perfected adepts, quote unquote. That is the very halls of Shambhala. And another short quote from the Voice. Let thy soul lend its ear to every cry of pain, like as the lotus bears its heart to drink the morning sun. Let not the fierce sun dry one tear of pain until thyself hast wiped it from the sufferer's eye. But let each burning human tear drop on thy heart and there remain, nor ever brush it off, until the pain that caused it is removed. These tears, O thou of heart most merciful, these are the tears that irrigate the fields of charity immortal. 'Tis on such soil that grows the midnight blossom of Buddha. Even without knowing the definitions of all the words or the many layers of a deeper meaning that are behind each of these passages, HPB's rendition of the Voice speaks deeply to the intuition. And in fact, we know of one student who, at the age of 16, had purchased a box of books as part of a raffle. And at the very bottom, she found a copy of the Voice of the Silence and started reading it. And without any knowledge of Theosophy or of Sanskrit, upon reading it for the first time, she knew its priceless worth. And today she's one of the most devoted students of Theosophy that we know of. As you all very well know, in the trans-Himalayan esoteric tradition, given for the first time in the English language by HPB, the Dhyani Buddhas are not fivefold, but sevenfold, revered as an emanation of the triune logos, heralding the dawn of every cosmos and every planetary system of evolution. One of the greatest mysteries of Theosophia, they are described as agents of universal divine mind who watch over, build, and descend through hierarchies of beings in order to become cosmic law, the seven kingdoms, as well as the seven principles of human and cosmic nature. They also repeatedly incarnate into critical junctures of history in perfect harmony with the zodiacal wheel. And according to HPB, the Dhyani known as Amitabha incarnated at least 24 times in the fifth root race alone, long before Gautama Buddha, and also manifested through Shankaracharya in the 2nd century of the Common Era and through Tsongkhapa in the 14th. Adi Shankara is regarded as the foremost expounder of non-dual, non-ritualistic Advaita Vedanta, the author of dozens of classic sacred texts, such as the Crest Jewel of Wisdom and Atma Bodha. And in her numerous articles that are collected under the title of The Mystery of the Buddha, HPB states that the incarnation known as Shankara was done to undo the errors committed by the historic Buddha, which is a very extraordinary thing to say. But she says that in his zeal, the Buddha, in his zeal to make the guarded teaching of the Brahmin priests available to the masses, that he inadvertently gave rise to this kind of form of nihilism that you still find in some schools of Buddhist teaching and practice. So that's a very, I think, instructive teaching that she gives there. And then it was in 1357 that the ray of Amitabha, known as the adept teacher Tsongkhapa, appeared in Amdo, Tibet. And his biography is very remarkable. At the age of 3, he took Buddhist layman's vows. At the age of 7, took those of a novitiate monk. By 17, he was a proficient doctor of medicine. By 19, a renowned scholar, debater, and dialectician. And by 32, he began to write. And in his 40s, is said to have performed initiations in the cave temples of the Potala Hill in Lhasa, long before the palace was built. Said to consult Manjushri at will. The Dhyani Bodhisattva perfected wisdom. Among Tsongkhapa's voluminous writings were the Lamrim instructions, the great exposition on the stages of the path, which we are only very briefly familiar with, but critically to purify, preserve, and promulgate the wisdom religion, that is Theosophia. He founded the Gelugpa order, the third Dalai Lama of which was recognized as a manifestation of Avalokiteshvara, also known as Padmapani and Chenrezig in Tibetan, the synthesis of the compassion and wisdom of all Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. Tsongkhapa also initiated, it said, a 7th century plan in order to prepare the world through mental and spiritual revitalization to be ready to participate in the formation of the distant 6th subrace. In the secret doctrine, formless, enlightened centers of consciousness manifesting through the dhyanis and repeatedly incarnating in our earth chain are referred to as the ever-living human banyan and the great sacrifice. All the world saviors, the bodhisattvas and the avatars. This is a quote from HPB. Let me just start that again. All the world saviors, the bodhisattvas and the avatars, are the trees of salvation grown out from the one seed, or bija, whether it be called Adi Buddha or Mahavishnu, end quote. Known by many names in different traditions, they are said to constitute a society of sages, a singular brotherhood of compassion, of adepts, Kumaras, Manus, avatars, Jivanmuktas, and Nirmanakayas of various grades and various responsibilities. In the Jain tradition, they are referred to as Tirthankaras, Christos in the Gnostic, heroes of goodness and light in the Pythagorean. They are said to all be known to one another and all working in perfect harmony with the whole, and that the upward arc of evolution itself, because it is a life or death struggle, just as without the nurturing protection and watchful guidance of the parent, the child would perish, so too, without the aid and guidance of this divine banyan, the human family would be lost. And while speaking of the grandeur and of the greater and lesser types of avatars and nirmanakayas in the SD, HPB equates them with Mahatmas. Quote, these personages may just as well be called rishis or avatars, etc., as they are great Mahatmas or Buddhas and are a universal and common property. They are historical sages, at any rate, for all the occultists who believe in such a hierarchy of sages, the existence of which has been proved to them by the learned ones of the fraternity. In the last pages of the Key to Theosophy, HPB points to the special effort made by Mahatmas in the last 25 years of each century. And her disciple and colleague, W.Q. Judge, repeats this several times in his writings and public talks. And the outpouring that occurred in the last 25 years of the 20th century, which would have been the seventh impulsion of that initiated by Tsongkhapa, is to us very evident, particularly in the diaspora of Tibetan Buddhist culture and its vast literature, in combination with the written and edited works of Raghavan Iyer that we find emerging since 1975, a magnificent restatement, confirmation, and elaboration of the architectonics and metapsychological application of what was given in 1875, including not only portions of the previously esoteric dimensions of Buddhism, but many of the world's other great traditions. And in the centenary edition of The Voice of the Silence that was issued in 1989, we find a foreword by the 14th Dalai Lama and a dedication by the 9th Panchen Lama, blessing the opening pages. And of the many Buddhist texts that are now available, which Raghavan pointed to as supplements to The Voice of the Silence, one that speaks deeply to us is Shantideva's The Way of the Bodhisattva, a seminal poem of the 8th century Buddhist master of Nalanda, which was only first translated into English in the 1980s. 6 chapters on the paramitas are preceded by the vow of bodhicitta. And the translation that we particularly like is this one it's called the Padmakara Translation Group. And there's a really wonderful introduction there that gives you an overview. Very moving, very well written. And also just as a note that in blessing this translation of the text of Shantideva, the Dalai Lama placed it on his head and declared that if he knew anything about compassion, it was from Shantideva that he had learned it. As we mentioned earlier in the Mahaprajna Paramita Sutras attributed to Nagarjuna, there are 10 paramitas that are listed, and students of the SD have sought to uncover the correlations with the tenfold cosmos that's given in Kabbalistic teaching, the Pythagorean decad, and the page 200 diagram that we find in the SD. Without going into all the intricacies and the details, we'd like to close this short overview by mentioning the 8th paramita, which some may not be very familiar with. It is called pranidhana, a Sanskrit word meaning to surrender, devote, or vow. The 10 pranidhanas, or the 10 great vows of a bodhisattva, can be condensed into a single one called the vow of bodhicitta. It's also in the Chinese Mahayana tradition, it's the vow of Kuan Yin, but it's the altruistic commitment to seek enlightenment on behalf of all suffering sentient beings. And in this great poem of Shantideva, he rejoices in the first glimmer, the first awakening of bodhicitta in the heart center, which he likens to finding, quote, a jewel in a heap of dust, unquote, and a rediscovery of the alchemical immortality of our true spiritual ancestry. And similarly, while HPB and RNI welcomed all to join in to study and benefit from theosophical teaching, for those who wished to dedicate themselves to not only this lifetime, but future lifetimes to its efforts, that a more formal, self-determined, and self-binding commitment to the cause of masters was needed. And in chapter 2 of the Bodhicharya Vatara, Shantideva extols the excellence and priceless worth of bodhicitta and honors those bodhisattvas, past and present. He calls the perfect leaders of all migrant beings who constantly bestow on boundless multitudes their own peerless joy unquote. He mentally evokes all the most precious and pure things the world has in it and offers it to them in gratitude without any reserve. And then he confesses his own blindness, ignorance, and wickedness, the evils he has amassed, and the sins committed through many lives in which he acted against the triple gem, against the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, against his parents, his teachers, his friends, and the rest, he says, through the force of his defilements of body, speech, and mind. And this confession, however, is not a cry for forgiveness, but a willing acknowledgement of error in the presence of those who he recognizes, sees everything, who equally know the karmic causes he has generated in past lives and all the defects of his character, as well as the authenticity and purity of the commitment that he's now fearlessly proposing to embrace. And just as he had offered all naturally occurring precious treasures, so does he now confess to all the sins that humankind is heir to. And in chapter 3, which is titled Commitment, Shantideva describes what he means to do by serving the Buddhas in order to become himself a source of refuge, of endless dana, of generosity, which is, of course, the first paramita. By all the virtue I have just amassed, may all the pain of every living being be wholly scattered and destroyed. For all those ailing in the world, until their every sickness has been healed, may I myself become for them the doctor, nurse, the medicine itself. Raining down a flood of food and drink, may I dispel the ills of thirst and famine. May I be a guard for those who are protectorless, a guide for those who journey on the road. For those who wish to go across the water, may I be a boat, a raft, a bridge. May I be a wishing jewel, the vase of plenty, a word of power, and the supreme healing. These magnificent words or verses are then followed. Oh, I'm sorry, you weren't able to follow as I was reading. But these verses are followed by those which over many centuries now have been recited by countless Buddhist monks, nuns, and laypersons who formally wish to commit themselves to the Bodhisattva path. And again, in his commentary, the Dalai Lama states that in preparation for reciting them, one should visualize all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas of the past, the present, and to come, not only the great teachers of one's own tradition, but also those of all other traditions. And one should also imagine, he says, it's very remarkable, all sentient beings, past, present, currently living, and of the future, as all being present in one's field of vision and capable of hearing one's voice. And to this entire assembly, one should commit oneself, just as all the Buddhas of the past embraced the awakened attitude of mind, and in the precepts of the Bodhisattvas, step by step, abode and trained. Just so, for the benefit of beings, I will also have this attitude of mind. And in those precepts, step by step, I will abide and train myself. The need for such a vow is repeated in the voice of the silence. To live to benefit mankind is the first step. And it is exactly such a vow, kept intact through many lives, through horrific trials, egoic deaths and rebirths, that propels the aspirant to these ever ascending tiers. And in the first fragment, these stages of ascent are given as a ladder of mystic sounds. by which one hears the voice of the inner God in seven manners. And here we find, again, very succinctly put and poetically put, what is called the path of hearing, taught by the Buddha in the Surangama Sutra, connecting up with the music of the spheres of Pythagoras, the flute of Krishna, the fourfold Vak of Hinduism, and the path of the word, as found in St. John's Gospel, that there are these levels of Akashic sound, color, number, and meaning, which are inaudible and invisible to the physical senses, but become fully perceptible to the immortal triad of every human being through the paramita path and the grace of the Guru, where there is a progressive fusion of the ethical and metaphysical teaching of the masters, the cries of humanity, and the voice of conscience at ever deeper levels of consciousness, substance, and energy, wherein the inner dhyani, the logoic voice of bodhicitta, becomes compassion absolute. And we'll close with this final reading from the voice. Behold, thou hast become the light, thou hast become the sound. Thou art thyself, thy master, and thy God. Thou art thyself the object of thy search, the voice unbroken which resounds throughout eternities, exempt from change, from sin exempt, the seven sounds in one, the voice of the silence. Om Tat Sat. So thank you all so much for allowing me to speak today and for your kind attention.